Ladies and gentlemen, we are live. And I gotta start the show up by reminding you of one quick thing. Do you remember in the middle of a historic title reign, we were introduced to a different version of a belt? It was actually version 2 of the NXT Women's Championship. And in order to do this belt justice and to go over the history of it, I had to call in an expert today. But you know what? After the intro, we're gonna talk about that. Welcome to the Wrestling Realm Presents Season 2 of Championship Culture. I'm Brandon the Guy, and remember, every belt has a story. Now, before we get into today's content, I want you to remember a couple quick things. Did you know that you can watch all of the Wrestling Realm content at any time just by going to youtube.com/the Wrestling Realm? If you go there, this also includes a playlist for just Championship Culture where you can catch up on all 25 episodes of Season 1. If that's not enough for you, follow us on all social media platforms, which include Instagram, Threads, and X. You can follow us by using you can follow us by using at the Wrestling Realm. And for 2023 and on, you can always go to Championship Culture _ where you see a lot of things that's related to belts. If you like and subscribe, you can engage in any of the conversation where we talk about all things wrestling. If that's not good enough, you can also download all of our audio content at Anchor, Stitcher, Podbean, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts. You can watch us and subscribe to our Twitch channel just by going to at Wrestling Realm. Now, I know there's some rumors, and I haven't been able to validate it or not, but I think that this year's SummerSlam will be in Cleveland, Ohio. So if you get a pre-sale, you know what, you're going to save some money. But when you don't have that pre-sale code to save you some money and try to jump on those tickets, you can always go over to SeatGeek.com. Now, why SeatGeek? Here at the Wrestling Round, we want to try to save you some money. So when you go over to SeatGeek.com, use the code of Wrestling Round, and it's going to save you $20 on any purchase of $50 or more. So if you're still looking for your WrestleMania tickets, which is right around the corner, you can go there. And like I said, $20 off anything of $50 or more. And the way those tickets are going, that $20 could help bring the price down just a little bit. So now, guess what today's about? This is volume 6. In season 1, we went through 3 different volumes, and in season 2, we promised to finish off. Only had one more volume, but for that one more volume, I got a surprise for that one. But in order to do this justice, I got to introduce, well, not necessarily introduce, I got to let people know who the guest is because she needs no introduction. She talks about what's next every Tuesday before it happens. But let me tell you who she is. She became a wrestling fan in middle school, crediting the first appearance of Lita and Jacqueline to the reasons that she watched SmackDown on Thursdays. She currently appears on Those Wrestling Girls as a guest sporadically before being invited to join TWG Fan Club with Queen PR in December of 2022, an interactive show that connects with fans regardless of wrestling history and hot topics. Some of her past experiences are Diva Talk, The Hardy Wrestling Show, All Elite Geeks, Breaking Through Glass Ceilings with Hollywood Brian H. Waters, The Jobber Tears Network, and Victorious Podcast. Started the Well Minority in 2022, which is a health initiative created to connect people with the Black and Brown community within mental wellness and resources. Recently started a weekly series called Watch What Happens Next. Now, some people might call it Watch What Happens NXT, but we know it's Watch What Happens Next, a fan interactive pre show that dives into the most exciting developmental WWE brand of NXT every Tuesday, right before the live show, and exclusively on those Wrestling Girl streaming platform. Ladies and gentlemen, when we talk about NXT, I could not do it without introducing you to all to the one and only, the lovely Seindole. Let's see let's see if she's ready for it. Seindole, are you there? Let's come on in so we can get this conversation started.
Hello.
Hello there.
Hi.
I didn't mean to keep you waiting. I just wanted to make sure I did it some justice, and I wanted people to hear what you've done because guess what? This is a lady that is, I don't want to say taking the industry by storm because I mean that she wasn't doing something before. This is a lady that's making these motions in this ocean. She is making the waves in the way that only the women can do in this industry, with the likes of people like Stephanie Hardy, Queen PR, Krista B, you name it. These are some of the who's who when it comes to women's wrestling, women's facts, women anything. These are the women doing it. And I'm more than happy to have you on this show, and I'm glad that you accepted the invitation for Volume 6 of NXT.
I'm so happy to be here and talking about my second favorite thing in the world, which is gold. So I'm just excited
Is it
to be
real?
here.
Is it
I feel like
gold
this
on
was
the
a long
strap?
time in the making. Say it
Yeah,
again.
and you know what? Yeah, I was gonna say, is gold on the strap or gold around? Which gold you like more?
Gold, baby. Gold. I don't
Gold.
discriminate, honey. It could be a gold bar, it could be a gold standard. We talking gold. So I'm just excited to talk about it.
So tell the people who you are and anything I missed. Tell them about yourself. I'm gonna give you this is your job. Let them hear who you
Um,
are.
I think you pretty much nailed it. I mean, I just came off of a live stream itself. I'm here every Tuesday. We watch what happens NXT, and I'm always going to shout out those wrestling girls because without them, I wouldn't have had the opportunity or the space of the platform to even be talking about the brand. I know a lot of people are probably watching NXT right now because it is the hottest thing going right now. I mean, if you like a flavor of both talented young people wrestling and also like seeing who's up going forward, you're gonna watch NXT. But a lot of history went into it. It was something that was meant to bring up a lot of stars developmental wise, kind of like what FCW and what OVW did for WWE in the past. And right now is just now become that brand that's like, I want to see who's coming up first. I want to see who's the best, I want to see who's going to be on the main roster soon. And the only way you're going to be able to do that is watch NXT. So I kind of amplified that. I've been a fan of NXT ever since it was introduced to me on television back in the WWE Network days, like I said before. I've been to takeovers. I just came from one of my first ever NXT shows in Deadline. It's just all been worth it to me. So I started doing that. I also, if it wasn't for the friends that I have, I wouldn't have been dabbled back into the love of wrestling. So of course I've fully aligned myself with those wrestling girls. Shout out to Krista B and Queen PR. I do a show with them. I was always on their Thirsty Thursdays. It's just a good time to be able to do something with your friends that you love. I know you and the guys with Dwayne and Brian and Brother Hugh always talk about how wrestling kind of keeps you guys and brings you guys together. And I just feel the same way. So that's kind of where my love of that comes from. And now I'm gracing my beautiful face on the camera almost every day during the week. So let's talk about it.
So let me ask you, before we get into the topic, do you feel like NXT is a third brand or do you feel like it's a developmental brand?
That's an interesting question to ask me. A lot of people will always say it's developmental. Um, I think with the production behind it, it's a lot more of a third brand because in the beginning it was definitely developmental. Let's not get it twisted. It was because it was a lot of, we're gonna shoot this person who we've been training in the performance center and we're gonna give them the spotlight to have one or two matches. But as it went over in time, Triple H's vision was kind of to make sure you knew who was coming across your screen. And I always give the flowers to the Arrival. I call them the Arrival band. I talk about the Paige and the Emmas and the Tyler Breeze and the Finn Balor and the Sami Zayn and the Ember Moon and uh Swerve and all those people who were kind of like the face of Black and Gold before they changed it, before things changed, because they literally put themselves on the map on saying, like, listen, we're not your flashy typical NXT superstars, but we have a lot of heart and we have a lot of grit. And it was basically Triple H taking what was in his heart, as far as it's not just about gimmick and talent, but I could take gimmick and talent and make you invest in these stars to also based on their talent. And you credit Triple H. We credit Shawn Michaels now. I will always give Dusty Rhodes his flowers for taking those kids and making them the full potential. Some of your favorites are one of Dusty's kids. That's not a secret. But even as we get into the belt a little bit more, there's a lot more than just grabbing the gold for them. The NXT, like the championships, all the belts were kind of that first taste of this is what it's like to be on top. And then when you get one taste of being on top, where else can I go from here? So I feel like with NXT, that's what the whole brand in itself is trying to do. Like they're trying to be on top, as far as if I can make it here, I can make it main roster. So as far as being a developmental brand, yes, you're there to grow. Yes, you're there to thrive. But you're also there to make yourself known, because like I said, a lot of people are saying I could never watch even this brand. When 2.0 came out, they're like, I could never see a Braun Breaker or Roxanne Perez. And I told them I feel sorry for you, because like Trick Williams and Carmelo Hayes and Braun Breaker getting the reaction they do from the SmackDown crowd that they've been getting in the past few months would have never happened if it was not for NXT. When the Shield first came, it was because you were watching SCW/NXT and you knew who Roman Reigns and Dean Ambrose and Seth Rollins were, because you watched that brand. It wasn't because you just turn on a SmackDown episode and they just attack. A lot of people were like, holy crap, that's Roman Reigns. He was just on NXT. What is he doing here? So giving NXT his flowers is definitely, in my brain, is always going to be their brand.
And if you
I know
notice,
that was a long rant.
no, it was fine, because
just
guess
to
what?
sum it up.
I think I echo the same sentiment, and it's crazy because look, so I said it must be Tuesday. We really are watching what happens next, and then I'm pretty sure this was a comment for you. Look who's in the building! Welcome, welcome! Can't wait to get into these comments, because
Hey!
I can't wait to hear some of these opinions, because we're gonna get to the nitty gritty of this belt. So I don't know if you remember,
Yes.
we had all these different versions, and they were all focused around belts, right? And this one that we're going to focus on, I'm going to show the belt in a second. In 2017, NXT General Manager William Regal, he announced that all of the belts will be getting an overhaul, right? For reasons. Let's just say reasons, right? And they were getting a different design. The letters would be in the center plate, similar to before, but now it's a whole different one, right? Um, to me, it felt like this belt went from an evolution, like the Divas belt went, to now the network logo, because we had, stones, colorful things, silver and pink, and now we're going with really black and gold. Still keeping the silver motif. And the thing that I loved about it, when we got these network belts, we did not discredit that third brand, as in it's still going to be a network logo, right? So when this belt came, yes, it had short history from 2017 to 2022, right? So when you
Mhm.
talk about this belt, I always like to say, every belt has a story, but we're going to dive into the
Right.
story behind this belt as it relates to NXT. But also, we're going to dive into the fact that, and we'll get to the design a little later, but this was the belt that was unveiled. Before we get into that, what was your initial take on this belt? And I'm going to just, as you're doing it, I'm going to let some of the people that might be watching us on Twitter or Facebook or YouTube, anywhere, just see some of the details as you describe. What was your initial reaction when this belt was revealed?
Um, I loved it, to be quite honest. The original belt was, and I hate to be disrespectful, is too glittery for me. I feel like they were trying to keep in fashion with the back then the Divas Championship belt. No disrespect to the butterfly belt itself. It did a lot of what it was supposed to do. It was for the divas, and I felt like when the NXT first belt came out. It was glittery, it was shiny, it was purple, it was round. It was and a lot of people don't know this, if they look back at it, it's actually resembled of the FCW belt they had before they changed FCW to NXT. So I felt like in order for them to give the respect of FCW that they wanted to keep around, because FCW, like I said, it's a brand that deserves to be respected on its own. It gave us a lot of the people you're obsessed with, the Charlottes, the Sashas, the
Naomi.
the Naomis of the world. A lot of people like AJ Lee had that belt at one
Oh,
point.
I forgot
It
about she
gave
did.
those Age had it at one point before Emma, and I even think at one point not Melina
Maria, did Maria Canales have it? I don't think Maria.
no, Maria
No,
Canales
she
didn't
did.
have it.
Somebody else had it. It was
Rosa
Mendez. Uh,
Rose Mendez had it at one
Mendez, yeah.
point. Like, it gave a lot of respect. It was a small belt. It was light enough for them to carry, and it was also an ode to the Divas belt to compete with it. So I never will slam that belt. But when that first belt was revealed, I said, okay, they're giving tradition to that. It was pink, it was shiny, it was round. Again, held by your favorite. But that belt that you're holding on to right now speaks to not just the girls, it speaks to the women trying to become the girls trying to become women. And for it to be unveiled on, believe at the time it was Mandy Rose that during that reign it was revealed on, it meant business. It meant that NXT was trying to make women not just the side piece to the men on that brand, but for Mandy Rose to have that belt and have one of the longest reigns on that brand with that belt meant something to me. But it also didn't go in vain and steer to it. It was just like, to me, a bigger belt. The detailing on it is a lot more cleaner. It looks like a male's belt, but it's still as important. Like, I remember even looking at the men's NXT championship belt, and I'm like, oh, that is a beautiful big. It's a nice strap. The gold detailing in it is really good. Do you have that belt?
I do. It's in a display case. I was thinking about grabbing it this show. I'm probably gonna grab it at the end because when you say the detail, one of the major things that I don't know which one I prefer, because in the comments it looked like Marcus is there from Four Sides of the
Hey,
Ring,
Marcus.
and this is this Queen PR or Krista B? Which one is it?
Of one of the two, probably Queen PR. Queen
Yeah.
PR calls me beautiful. If it was Krista, she would call me. She'd be like, "Hey, Bonnet." So,
And if you look, another comment says throughout the women's version of that NXT title was better than the men's because of the chrome letters in the center made it pop. So I couldn't
yes,
decide, because remember the logo for takeovers were kind of interchangeable. It felt like it was always NXT, or like, it felt like the brand. The biggest difference is on the men's, this was gold and this was silver. So then when they did the
right,
women's, I said, I'm glad that they're
right.
giving them the same treatment on NXT that they did on the main roster. You revamped the men's belt, and the women's belt is exactly on the same footing, same exact strap, same exact, of course, it's a smaller version. I'm sorry, let me hold it down. And
It's a huge
some
belt.
people,
I've held one like duplicate version of it, and I was like, this is it. Kind of it weighs the same as the new WWE belt that Rhea Ripley has, the women's belt, but it's heavy. So I don't mind you holding it up. I
so
would have
of that,
difficulty. I'd be like, nope.
and it's crazy because of the small time, 9 women held it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you've said that the first version was like an homage to FCW.
Right.
This was like, to me, an upgrade of that, because they said, okay, as we evolve, let's evolve our belt designs, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when we first got this, it was in the middle of that historic reign that I talked about. I don't know if anybody was really ready for Oscar. And that's what I want to talk about, because remember, she had the first version and they gifted her this new version. Oftentimes, sometimes when the champion is around, you will say, oh, here's a new version of the belt, or here's a different version, or if they change the belt name, they change the design, we were able to see this, right? So when we say, was anybody really ready for Oscar at the time? Do you think anybody was ready for Oscar?
No.
All right.
No.
That was a good.
Listen, listen. And it's funny because I always talk about during my I call it the boycott days of WWE. I was tuning into Japanese Joshi wrestling, and I
Mhm.
saw Asuka grace my screen, and I said, "This is the person you sign. Like you sign her. Like you. So you want the girls to like be in pain 24/7. Okay, y'all want problems, not peace. We get it. So when I heard that she was going up for the championship, I was just like, oh boy.
So when I say nobody was ready for it, right? So let's just think about this, right? We had this final boss level took down the hugger, right? She took down the hugger, took the belt from her, couple different rematches, right? But should Ember Moon been the one to dethrone her besides winning
Mm-hmm.
it? Because remember, Ember Moon came along when Oscar was forced to vacate it because she went on to, you know, she got drafted to Monday Night Raw. Um, Oscar was good. She went on to run the Royal Rumble. I just feel like you had Oscar like that final boss, but then you had this new challenger has entered the ring, and it felt like Ember was checking off every box to be the anti-Oscar and the anti one to say she can dethrone her. Do you think they kept that away and just say, you know what, relinquish it and give her the belt? Because what's your thoughts on that? Let me hear what you're thinking about that.
Are you referring to the reaction that people gave when that happened, or are we talking about an overall thought of Ember Moon kind of getting? I mean, she got what she deserved. I'd be really honest with you, um, and I hate
She
that
got
she was. Say it again.
she got the title, but I'm saying the fashion that she had to win it because it was vacated versus dethroning Oscar.
I mean,
It's tough, right?
it's tough because I felt like I was so robbed. Like I feel like it's one of those things in wrestling where you feel like you're robbed. Like with a lot of moments that could have happened, and that was just one of them. Because I look, like, even with now, she's no longer in the promotion. Ember Moon is a phenomenal wrestler, a phenomenal talent. Oscar in the same way, but I felt like the way it was vacated was not the way to go. Especially when I say that now because a lot of wrestlers are pulling double duty. When it comes to NXT and main roster, like Braun Breaker is their NXT Tag Team Champion, but he's on SmackDown. So if you're gonna have him vacate, like I never liked vacate fashion to begin with. I didn't like it when it happened with Paige. I didn't like the way JBL did that. And I didn't like it that it was one vacated the same way because I was felt like I was robbed of seeing like Ember Moon fight for it. But we already know at that time Ember Moon was such a different person, such a different talent, a different fighting breed, I want to say. So it wasn't in vain. I'll put it that way. But yeah, I just felt like I was robbed of seeing something
Oh,
really cool happen and didn't let it happen. I'm sorry. I'm trying to be modest about it, but I'm like, y'all stole it from me.
yeah, I
Not
feel like
fair.
we missed that moment. And don't get me wrong, Ember went on to have a great career in NXT, and it was her reign lasted about 100. Was it 140 or 150? I think it lasted for the better part of a year, right? About half a year, her reign lasted, right? But
I have it in my notes, so give me one
okay, I
second.
say, all right.
Yeah.
But when her reign,
I,
she was a defending champion. She had
mhm.
when I tell you, I was impressed with Ember from the first time, but it was a dark horse in the background. And I don't know if you remember who that dark horse was, because I'm saying to myself, oh, somebody transitioned from MMA real quick, right? Somebody transitioned into May Young Classic. But I'm gonna give you a crazy thing. While you fact checking that, right? I think it was like was it 100? I think it was like 150 days or something, because it wasn't near 200, but it was well over 100 because it was a dominant reign. I was like, ooh, what's next? Um, but I'm gonna ask you this question: Was this the best rivalry that we saw in NXT for this belt?
So there was a transitional phase where a lot of people were um horse the four horsewomen. I was horsewoman out very early.
Mhm.
Y'all can kick me in the back if you want to. I don't care. I say it all the time. I'm like, I'm horsewoman out. Like Sasha, Becky, Bailey, and Sasha will always go out and flame as the best to literally usher in a whole new era of women. They assisted in that. because they made people watch NXT. However, when the Mae Young Classic returned, I always there's something I always rewatch because I liked watching the beginning. A lot of the people that even you see now NXT, they're on that brand. Like I talk about Wendy Chu competed at one point. Priscilla Kelly, who's now Gigi Dolan, was there at one point. You had a lot of Groove Wrestlers International, like Guinea. You had a lot of you had Shayna Baszler when she was announced she was going to be in there. I said, you put Ronda Rousey's best friend in the Mae Young Classic.
And she
I'm like, y'all
transitioned
went and
so
did that.
well.
Yeah, Kyrie Singh, she's a phenomenal transition. Like anybody who could have literally taken the best of both worlds and then learned more, you could tell she was somebody that was like, listen, if this is where I'm going to be, I'm going to make it work. I'm going to work for it. And she works for it, still working for it till this day. I think Shayna Baszler is a phenomenal wrestler. She's one of my top 10s, to be honest. But if we're going to talk about somebody that should have had that belt, and that whole feud amongst them shocked me when it was Kyrie Sane and then it was Shayna. Like that was what shocked me the most because, and I like that it did shock me because it wasn't a traditional, we're going to give it to the person who's kicking the most ass. Shayna came in really humble because we knew how lethal she can be. But when it came to the series and even in the finale, she became really humble until she was like, all right, I'm done being humble. Now I want what's mine because I let you won and that's cute. And we're in the semifinal and we worked hard for this, but now I'm here to get what's mine. And it's not to say that Kyrie Singh is not just as good, but just for them to make it a rivalry.
Because this is something
We
we
got a
saw
bonus
for
after
almost.
something that wasn't really. A lot of people didn't even expect the continuation to happen after the Mae Young Classic, but I'm glad they let it happen.
That's what I was going to get to. We saw
Mhm.
that rivalry be born in the Mae Young Classic. And for them to run it back at Evolution, correct? That's when they wrestled again, right? And
Yes,
I remember Kyrie saying, and I always say this about WWE as a side note, once you can get the crowd participation, you're over. The only extra thing you got to do is sell some t-shirts, right?
pretty
Kyrie's
much.
pirate gimmick was perfect. You know, the submission magician, the Queen of Spades, perfect, right? The crowd was always into whether you love her or hate her, Shayna Baszler. But it was something
Right.
special when that music hit for Kyrie. The crowd just went nuts because they wanted to see her. The insane elbow, all of that stuff. I
Mm-hmm.
think that this was the rivalry that defined that belt because that was one of the true rivalries that it could translate at any time. Because for the fact
Right.
that we had Kyrie win and then she lost it back to Shayna, it was like she didn't lose anything in defeat. It was
Right.
like, okay, so now you've had her biggest rivalry, right? Shayna Baszler. She went on a tear closer to Oscar's reign, right?
Oh yeah.
But when she went on this tear, 416 days later, she was holding on to that title, right? I was almost thinking like, well, who can beat her? You know, and Triple H being Triple H with his Triple H dust, as they like to say on the wrestling realm. Credit to the real Dwayne Allen, right?
Triple H doing Triple H doing
his
Triple
Triple
H
H dust.
things.
He was sprinkling some stuff, right? He had been giving us, you know, the hero that we needed to take down the final boss that he had built up. Because over in, his NXT UK, he was building a star, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when I say building a star, when whew, how do I say this without messing it up? When Rhea Ripley started going after that championship in regular
Mommy.
NXT, this is pre-mommy, right? This was just,
Pre-mommy.
I'm Rhea freaking Ripley, right? Or Rhea Bloody Ripley, like you used to say, right? We knew she came off her NXT UK run where some people, if you watched it, it was great, right? But
Yes.
now we have a head-to-head competition with the Up and Start promotion that everybody was saying going, the Wednesday Night Wars, right? Who would have thought?
No, but you know what though? But look at the smartness behind it because we thought that they weren't watching each other, but they literally took their like developmental brand to go up against it and it ate every single time, to be honest. Especially if you were somebody that was trying to deviate away from WWE and watching the other brand, they were
Mhm.
like, no, like we got you want something, run it
Come
back.
on over. Come
We're
on
giving
here.
you
This is what I
this.
got. You mad about this? Check this out. But Triple H with
Exactly.
his dust, he had an answer for one of those. Oops, wrong one. That's what I should have. He had an answer. He had an answer, and his first NXT UK Women's Champion, challenging the submission magician and the Queen of Spades, right? Even with all of her interference, her, her road dogs and everything, some reason on that night, Rhea Ripley was better, right?
Mm-hmm.
Rhea Ripley did something. They not only beat the ratings, which beyond the belts, okay, cool. But Rhea Ripley showed that her and Shayna Baszler were main event players. Do you think that moment happens without AEW?
Ooh, that's a good question. That is a really good question. Do I?
Oh,
Mm.
I think I got it. That's a. I can feel Dwayne right now saying,
But you
"Oh
know
God,
what
dang it, he
though?
got me again."
But you know what though? I say this and I say it with the full respect. You had to be a true appreciator of all wrestling to really appreciate that it didn't matter what you were watching at the time, because at the time I believe that when this was going on, you were watching the era of the belt collector himself. I call him the belt collector, Kenny Omega, kind of tap in and get another belt. And this was around a pandemic, yes, but if you weren't invested in that, you're going to be invested in the brand no matter what. But this win gave you it gave a lot of people a run for their money. Even the match in itself, I remember the match being really intense. I also remember, like, yo, if Rhea Ripley doesn't walk out with everything that she's been building herself to, because she went through a lot of changes herself. It was easier for Shayna Baszler because Shayna Baszler was kind of more established. I'm a black belt and I choke chicks. And if you get in my way, it's what's gonna happen. Like, that's exactly what Shayna gave you off the bat. Rhea kind of had to reinvent herself and be her true self, even before, even pre mommy, even when she came in skull, spike jacket, all altitude, kind of giving like a darker version of herself, rocker style. It was a already evolved version of the person she was before that. So this was a different Rhea Ripley, and that's what excited people about Rhea Ripley the first time, because it wasn't just, some like strong UK girl coming straight out of NXT UK. No, she went in with she went in as herself and a completely different attitude. So when I say that's what made it worth the watch for a lot of people who were already, like I said, the horsewomen had came and gone, Paige came and gone. You were also issuing other people along with her. Like, you got a toast of Io Shirai, you got a toast of Dakota Kai at the same time, with Tegan Knox at the same, like all those women together. Bianca Belair was just starting. She was a heel, smacking gum with long hair. She was
And
somebody
the
different.
earrings, the big ear.
Yeah, and the big earrings and the different color lipstick at the time. Like, they were all women. You were like, okay, they not leaving us with just memories. They're leaving us with people that can make everything interesting. So when you look at that and you look at that match, you're like, okay, this was a way to douse in one more era of hard combat. These are not just women that are going to prance around the room and be gimmick. Like, they gave you another era of both gimmick, but also gave you fighters. Rhea and Shayna Baszler, to me, are both fighters.
And it was crazy to see the styles work well together. Because
Mm-hmm.
I thought it would have been a thing where like one didn't want to, I don't want to take this move, I don't want to take this. They both in defeat and winning came out with something extra after it. And it's crazy because, well, I'm gonna ask the people in the comments, do you think, well, I think Taekwon, welcome back, brother. We glad to see you. I think this is his response. So I said, does this happen without AEW? And I know it's been said that, competition breeds,
Yeah.
you know, more creative juices. It breeds everything. And I think Triple H did so well with this division that it was always like, who's next to take it from without discrediting the other women in the roster. Because Shayna went through almost the entire roster and finally got Rhea. And I honestly thought that Rhea's downfall was going to be a Tony Storm because that was her
Mm-hmm.
downfall at NXT UK. They kind of built it up that way. Um, he said Dynamite was only two
Yeah.
months around at this time, and
Yeah.
Rhea was already being pushed.
So I could see
So I
it
see
went
where
happening too. That's where I
okay.
agree, because you have to think about it too. At the time, And probably Taekwon realizes that the only person that they were really pushing on AEW at the time was Britt Baker. Like Britt Baker was their
She
star
was the.
people.
I was gonna say
Jade
she was.
was, huh?
Yeah, I was gonna say she was it.
Yeah, she like Jade was that physique kind of, so they had them to kind of hold on to, but WWE held on to their full roster of women, the people that they were interested in no matter what was going on. So that's what really makes a difference to me. I think too, what doesn't get his flowers enough is also the fact that UK groomed Rhea to be, UK groomed Rhea to also be championship quality because she was their first inaugural champion as their women's champion. So when it came down to that match, I was like, "There's no in my mind, Rhea is going to be a future champion." Same thing when she became the UK Women's Championship. Same thing. I was like, "This is a woman that you need to put out in the forefront and make the face of a belt, no matter what."
Hmm.
So
No matter what, and that's crazy because Marcus actually said, "Do you think the NXT should have thrown the title on Deonna Purrazzo at least once while she was there?" So I'm gonna let you answer it. I'm gonna give my 2 cents about Deonna because I want to know, Marcus, when would you have thrown the belt on her? But tell the people what's your answer to that, and I'm gonna leave it on the comments because I want to. We go on. Let me put the belt down. We're gonna stop with the belt for a minute because I just want to hear what you're gonna say.
So I love her now. I adore Dion Praz now. I think she's a phenomenal wrestler, a phenomenal technician. Um, it was one of those
Look how
mishaps
small it
with
is on my arm.
Diana. I can't say it again.
No, I said it was kind of small on my arm. I was going to do this, but it looks kind of small. I'm about to get the men's
Oh, you
belt. Go
did.
ahead.
It's harder for me to say that because at the time in their eyes and Tony Storm had the same difficulty. Um, they weren't seeing Deonna Purrazzo the way that a lot of fans who had watched her before were seeing Deonna Purrazzo. I say the same thing about Tony Storm. If it's one of those things that we look at it now it's because there's other brands that they've both thrived on. We wouldn't have been able to see their potential or their humble beginning if it wasn't for WWE. But giving them the belt would have not. I'm trying to say this without burying myself. Giving the belt would have not been the right move because I feel like Deonna Purrazzo was still green a little bit. She was green to WWE TV, and it doesn't do much. If that makes any sense, like it doesn't help. The same way I felt like even with Tony Storm, doing all she did and being and almost making it to the finals at the previous Mae Young Classic, and then they gave her that second chance, and then she became a champion and she went on main roster and she had that feud with Charlotte and that fell through, and now she's in a different promotion, absolutely killing it, being herself, doing her character, doing her own thing that I know the way she wanted to, in the same path with Deonna Purrazzo. Some people, when it comes to um the show, it's so mean to say this, but she wasn't adding much. What do I mean by that? There's some talent that the fans love them. The fans love them so much. The fans are gonna rally and puke and rally and follow your story and cheer for you. But when it comes to you performing, and when it comes to you selling me a story, and when it comes to me believing in you that you deserve it, not everybody's going to hit the mark. Perfect example of being right now. A lot of people love her. I'm waiting to see what happens when she comes back because she's been injured for a second time. It came to Cora Jade. When Cora Jade first came out, I believed that in Cora Jade so freaking much. Like, Cora Jade was an indie darling. She was small. She had face. She had pep in her step. She did these daredevil moves that wowed the crowd and wowed the fans. When she became, it took her to become a tag team champion with her best friend, Roxanne, for me to be like, okay, maybe she can carry a belt. Maybe she could be interesting. But then she turned on her friend, and I was like, okay, even with that, like, where is that going? It went almost nowhere. It went nowhere. And we're being transparent here on the show. It didn't go. It didn't go far. Roxanne Perez, like for example, same thing. Roxanne Perez is somebody you can give everything to, but her being healed now, and if she were to become a champion, I'm sorry, would be more interesting than her first run at the championship gold. And that's just my opinion, because now she's finally giving into that character and selling you a long-term story that's been built. She is the prodigy. She is somebody that the fans love. She is somebody that's I've been watching wrestling since I was a kid. And so I'm a fan. And because of that, I want to have the belt. Great. Love that. Understand that. What are you doing to make me invested in the fact that you can hold the championship belt for a long time? One person, and I'm going to wrap it up. I'm trying. One person that I slept on that did a great job in making me invested when they held the championship for when they held it was when Mito Satomura first got it. Because Mito Satomura was somebody who was respected throughout the entire industry. She's called the final boss for a reason. So watching her go up for the gold when it was in UK and her getting the gold, it was like, now you're making me interested because this is somebody you have faith in. She's the final boss. She's the top of the line. She's the top of the food chain. So when it came for her to unify with Mandy Rose, Mandy Rose didn't really earn my respect until that match. And I hate that it had to happen as a triple threat. I always say all the time that Mandy Rose was kind of sent back because they didn't have enough faith, which is weird to me with the main roster thing. They didn't have enough faith in her in the main roster when she'd been involved in so many storylines and had so many tag teams. But something told me they saw championship goal potential in her women's champion. But in order to test her, they took her back down to NXT and put that belt on her. But look at what she did when she had that belt. She was in like Mandy Rose and Deanna Peraza and Tony Austin in the same person. This person just put the comment on. They literally were in a class of people where you needed to either do the most to prove that you deserved the belt, or if you didn't do enough, you were going to sit in limbo. So Deanna Peraza, and I understand her release came as a shock to a lot of people, but she needed to be outside of promotion to work on herself a lot more and to have that exposure. And she's done great things from CMM to CMML to AAA Women's Championship at the same time, to Impact Knockouts. To she could be an AEW Women's Champion soon. She's done a phenomenal job. She did not need to be NXT Women's Champion to prove that.
That's it. That's what I was gonna say. And Taekwon kind of hit the nail on the head. He said, "I'm going to be real. Deanna Peraza was signed to NXT, and I was actually watching NXT weekly. Can't remember anything she's did.
It's not memorable."
Right? And according to Marcus, same thing. She was in the hard class, like you said. When it comes to that era NXT, so that's what I was going to approach. I was going to take, but I see what you're saying. And of course, Dennis King is in the comments. So what's going on, brother?
What's on, Dennis?
Let me say this about it. Sometimes we get wrapped up, like Finn Balor being the first Universal Champion is not the Finn Balor that we knew as Prince Devitt.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? The Finn Balor we have right now in the Judgment Day is not the same one that went back to being Finn Balor with the X in NXT when he went back the second time. Deanna Peraza fell into that category that we know her down and we know her body of work. It didn't come out and it didn't translate in NXT. It didn't even translate on the main roster where she had those 2 matches. Something about it just didn't connect. Not to say she ain't make no noise. As the virtuoso CMLA, like you said, AAA, even when the thing happened with Roxanne Perez and she went to WWE and they needed a ROH champion, they said, oh God, who do we need? Boom, she was there. And she carried it. She did what was needed because she's a great talent. We didn't get to see that. And I don't want to say we was robbed of it, but we didn't get that exposure because it was so, the bar was so high, she couldn't break out like the other ones were. Like everybody else was fighting for these different shots. Whereas though Rhea kept doing something to make you pay attention to her. Tony Storm had a gimmick that made you want to pay attention to her. Deanna in a gimmick of I'm the virtuoso, when nobody else is doing it, stands out. But when other people are standing out so much, like it worked in Impact. I wanted to see her in Impact. I still want to see her. I was saying when she didn't get the belt, I'm like, please don't fall into that obscurity that I didn't challenge for the title, then I'm gone because
Mhm.
it can do so much. And I know that was a tangent I went off, but we're gonna get back to this NXT belt. But thanks Marcus for the comment and taking us down
But
that
it's a
rabbit
good
hole.
question. It is a good question because that's why I want people to realize that you don't want 24/7 championship behavior with a belt like the NXT Women's Championship. And I'm going to just explain a little bit. We get frustrated, and as somebody who's a fan of women's wrestling, and Patricia probably is in the same boat as me. Can't stand when a belt is hot potatoed. I can't stand it. It loses legitimacy for me. I don't take it seriously when they do that. I feel like that's what they were doing for a long time with the women's championship belt, the women's tag team belt right now. They're hot potatoing it, and it took for them to merge that belt, and I thought it would change when they merged it. It has not changed. They are still doing it.
We had
So
more champions last year than we had.
than we had the year before.
I
Like,
mean, in total, right? I think we had
yeah,
more
like
champions last year than we've had in total of
part of me
champions.
was like, and I don't. Part of me was hoping they didn't do it with the NXT NXT Women's Tag Team Championship because they have really good tag teams with it. A lot of makeshift teams, but teams that you now notice on the main roster. I mean, yeah, Zoe, for one point when Io Sky was it, I loved Io Sky's tag team, and now she's a women's champion. And same thing with, like, for example, with
And
Katana
Carter.
and Car, yeah, with them, they deserve it. Same thing I felt like when the Iconics won it at WrestleMania, they deserved it because it was made for them. They were literally a tag team. So, but I hate that I hate when a belt is hot potatoed. I'm glad they're not doing that with this belt. It's because
Well,
it makes all the interest like lost. It just makes it seem like you have a belt that's just there for women that are just there. And that's not what this is about.
and I'm gonna tell you something. So let's talk about hot potato because in the time frame when we was having long title reigns, we were having,
Mm-hmm.
establishing this belt, and I'm gonna just talk about this version, right? We had something happen, right? So we know that this feud was like all right, this is the up and coming final boss that we done built to the person that can dethrone him, right? But that year, do you remember what happened? Somebody won the Rumble, right? And we got a surprise, surprise, surprise for our champion. Lo and behold, all bow down to the queen, deciding when she won the Rumble, I want a challenge for this belt. Now, we can go through the speculation train that is because Rhea Ripley had visa issues. We can go through the whole our confidence, whatever the dirt she said. I could, at the end of the day, I was looking forward to the match because remember, Rhea was, oh look, it's a new Charlotte when she first came in the first Mae Young Classic, right? And she
I don't know why they
chopped her
did that
hair.
girl like that.
I don't know, but they chopped her hair off. She came into her own. She became who she was. Um, and I'm gonna tell you something funny. Rhea Ripley's been winning at Mania since she, got rid of her pants, and she said her and Bianca said, "Oh, we putting the thighs up." I was like, they really changed their costume altogether, which
Mhm.
sometimes for the men it works all the time when they have a change of their ring gear. Look what happens, right? So I always laugh all day because she came out with the white and blue pants. I was like, she's the Raw champion. Why's she coming out with that? But I mean, with NXT champion with blue and white pants. Like, man, okay, it's your WrestleMania gear, whatever it may be, right? But
Uh-huh.
we had this happen, and we've seen this happen. And this is who's I think Dolph Ziggler is his first love, and I'm pretty sure Charlotte is his second. So we had this happen. We talking about hot potato. 100 days with Rhea jumped over the Flair for only what was it, 60 days or so, just to get us to the next NXT pay per view, right?
Mhm.
Was this a bad decision?
So you want to hear a fun fact about that? And nobody notices it, but I remember it. So you talked about for the longest time NXT was developmental.
Hmm.
And when this feud started happening, they moved NXT to the USA network. So guess who decided to start calling it a third brand? USA. And the only way you were going to get the notification and the notice you were, unfortunately, again, I'm in the same boat as you. I don't care what visa issue was going on. People didn't care about the NXT Women's Championship until Charlotte held that belt. I hate to say it that way. I hate to give you that point of view. The whole thing made no sense to me. The whole thing made zero sense to me. For her to go after that belt, I understand it was a part of, oh, like Charlotte is like one of the most decorated champions of all time, blah blah. She never held the NXT champion, but I'm like, who cares?
But
Like,
she
I'm
held it
like,
before. That's the crazy
yeah,
part.
I
Like
was
they
like,
tried to
I
erase
was
her
like,
first reign like it didn't
right.
exist. I
And
was
then it's
like,
like y'all made it seem like, okay, so y'all want her to have all three versions of that belt. Like, what was it? I was just like, it made no sense. And then it made me realize that was the first time I realized that not a lot of people were watching NXT because people are like, yeah, she's never had the belt before. And I'm like, what are y'all talking about? Like, she literally won it in a second tournament when it was the circle belt. So what are y'all trying to get her two versions of the same
when she
belt?
was cartwheeling, she was
Yeah,
cartwheeling her entrance.
like, are y'all trying to make her the first two-time NXT champ? I was just like, why? What are we doing? Like, we've already had, like, what are we doing? But I think it was mostly that. I think it was the visa issue, from what I understand, because we didn't see Rhea for a long time after that, and then she popped up with Judgment Day, right? Right after.
No, that's what she popped up as when her and Bianca were on that
Yeah, Bianca.
trajectory
Yeah.
together. Yeah, they were on
Right.
the trajectory. One was Raw, one was SmackDown. Because
Right.
we're gonna get to who was their counterpart in NXT
She
in a
was a
second
tag
because
team. She was a tag team with Liv right after that,
it
right?
was so much stuff happening. No, Nikki Ash. It was a whole bunch.
Yeah.
She had the
I forget about
forgotten
that.
years.
I
But
forget
it's
about that
crazy
so much. That's so
because
bad.
think about it, we had the transitional Charlotte, right, for whatever reason, but then we had this happen. This was a different EO than what we were introduced to. Remember, we were
Mhm.
introduced to this fun-loving, high-flying genius of the sky, and then all of a sudden, a wardrobe change, and it was a whole different EO. And do you remember that match, that triple threat match that she had? It was at the end of the house pay-per-view, right?
Yes.
It was with her and that's when Rhea popped up after the visa issue because was
Yeah.
in that triple threat match, right? I just knew they were going to give it back to Rhea. But when EO won it, was this a surprise for you?
No, I feel like it was something that was long overdue. I mean, I've always for someone as talented as EO, and I know this is pre me watching like EO before she got into WWE, I felt like she was somebody that definitely deserved it. So, in my respect to, it was a long time. It's one of those things where you always say it's a long time coming. It was a long time coming for Io Sky. She's different in a sense. A lot of people wanted her to be the next Asuka. I've never wanted that from her. I think that's very generic for people to want that from her. But I felt like with somebody with another alternative style, as somebody who's a hard worker, I felt like it was long overdue, in my opinion. She deserved it. She really did.
And when you talk about that, do you remember how long her title reign lasted?
For EO Sky, wasn't
Yeah.
it like only a week or so?
Oh no, EO had it for a while. Remember, hers lasted almost a year.
Year, yeah. Oh yeah.
Almost a
You
year.
know why?
But she wasn't featured as much. Let's call it what it is. She really wasn't featured as we were used
That's
to.
the issue
Oh, I'm
with
sorry, I forgot one
that
thing. Remember, for a brief period, when Rhea had the belt, it wasn't NXT Women's Championship; it was the NXT Championship,
championship.
and they were calling her and Adam Cole the NXT champion. And we're like, what? Why did you have to take women off of there? Like you could have just. But I forgot about that little tidbit. But we had EO hold it for almost a year, and then we got a trench coat wearing person took it from her.
What did you
And
wait?
she had a trench coat. That's what I remember about Raquel Rodriguez. Remember, she came as this like larger than life woman with a trench coat. That's all. That's really what I remember. And I was like,
I'm
she
gonna
could.
break fourth wall. When you put that in the comments, I was like, wait, did he really just like call her trench coat? We got so many nicknames for this girl. I be calling her Flex Back. I be like, and I gotta stop. But I remember
They
it
call her
very
on Russell
vividly.
Talk. They say by Kel Rodriguez, but we go. Corey seems to like her. He said Raquel is fantastic now. I feel like she was dark and broody, and it was like she really came into her own when
Yeah.
she won that title. And it was crazy because when she won it, I was like, I can get behind this because it was a celebration of Bianca on SmackDown, Rhea on Raw, and now her as the I don't want to say queen of NXT because I'm saying like Charlotte, but she's the top of NXT. And I was like, we're in good hands right now.
Right.
We got three um good generational talents right now. And it was like it kind of fell off because then Mandy was there. And Mandy's title run kind of overshadowed Raquel. Because it was like, well, do we even want to talk about Raquel? Do we want to just go to Mandy? Because Mandy was the last person to hold this version of the belt until it turned to this 2.0 belt that we don't even want to get into that because that was that's a that's that. That's all I'm gonna say about that.
No, let's not. Okay. I understand it's very hard for people to understand that Mandy Rose was a champion of 2.0 for that long, but
Oh no, I'm not discrediting her. I'm discrediting the belt. I hate when they change the belt.
oh
I'm
no,
not
I didn't like
discrediting
when they
her.
changed the belt either. But for her to do what she did when they did change the belt, she did a to me a phenomenal job holding on to it and making it relevant and having. And I understand it was like, okay, it's toxic attraction or she needs help from JC and Gigi, but look at it. Look at what it did. It made stables relevant again. When was the last time you had a dominating all female stable? For them to do it with that belt at the center of it all, I will always give all three of those ladies their flowers, especially Mandy. They did what they can with it. I will give them their flowers for that because it could have been something that could have easily fell off. It could have been something that was easily irrelevant, but they were in a
Mm-hmm.
stable. They all made it work together, and it kept the attention on not only on three of them but on the belt too. Because now you started slowly. You're like, who's going to take it from her? There needs to be a triple threat of so and so to happen. There needs to be. She's going up against when they unified it even. There she's going up against Mina Satomura and Blair Davenport, who are the best at NXT UK. Like it did what it was supposed to do. So I always give it the credit that I always give them the flowers that they deserve for that.
And I'm not, and I love that she was. I want to call it a repackage. It was a. This is the presentation of Mandy Rose because
Right.
she was on the main roster and it was that I don't want to say his name because I don't want to have issues. That was a typical booking that he saw a blonde woman. This is how we're going to present her. This is the only way I know how to present her. And it was like when she came to NXT, it
It was
was
like you.
I'm
I'm sorry
Mandy
to cut you
Rose.
off, but you did it there, but you couldn't do it on the main roster. But it's okay. Continue. Just things I noticed. You could do it
you
on a smaller brand, but you can't do it on a bigger brand. Okay.
okay?
Gave
You
her
get what
like
I'm
four
saying?
different tag team partners, but you couldn't do it there. Okay. I was like, all right.
So I don't know if I let me see. It says NXT Mandy Rose and Toxic Attraction had a chokehold. Not gonna lie, but in all seriousness, they were fantastic ever during that time. They made me pay attention to not a group, but each individual. I felt
Exactly.
like each person had a purpose in the faction. It wasn't like it was we're just here to keep Mandy as champion. No, we're here because we want to wrestle and we want you to look at us. We're here
Right.
because we are a toxic attraction, and that's like it was a perfect name. It was a perfect scenario. I don't think it would have worked with any other combination of those women at the time, and it made us pay attention to who Gigi Dolan was. I feel like I want to say she stood out, but I was like, I didn't know much about her, and then I'm like, oh, okay, I'm into this. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like a thing where, as much as I want to say this belt, I honestly think this belt had more for NXT than any
Mhm.
other belt. So,
Right. Because
I
and
mean,
then
for the women anyway.
you have to think about how impressive it is. Mandy Rose had that title for 413 days. She's her, and then Io Sky was 30. Io Shirai was 304. Like
Okay, see,
respectfully, say again.
no, go ahead. I'm listening.
Respectfully, that earns all the respect from me. Everybody else is a combined reign.
That is true. Because I think the only other person that got close was, well, no, Shayna Baszler, second
Shayna
reign.
Baszler is also combined. Shayna Baszler was
Oh, it is.
four, I think 440. Was it
What was
449 or
her second
442?
reign? I feel
No,
like
her
her second
second
reign was
reign
the
was
longest.
no, 449 and 440. 446. Somebody in the comments, I need Corey for a second because it's either 449 and 448 or 448 and 449. I can't remember. I think it's no, sorry, 548 and 549 or 549 and 548. I can't remember. It's one of the two, but it was close. Combined numbers are like close and close. But
Yeah,
it
because it
was
was like the second reign for Shayna just
right,
was the longer reign, right?
right,
The second one because that's when Rhea. It was a big deal that Rhea took it from her because nobody else could.
right.
Oh look,
And
Justice in the comment. I'm surprised he hasn't fact checked this.
Justin,
I'm
hi
waiting for him to fact check
Justin.
this. Yes, ladies and gentlemen,
The,
don't touch the screen. I am holding the NXT Women's Championship over my shoulder, and I will say this silver is kind of taking over a little bit more. See what I did
doesn't
there?
it
Taking
shine?
over. It's taking
Tag,
over a
take
little bit more.
But look at the shine. Just even look at the shine of the silver. When you look at the men's belt, your focus is always on the middle because the gold, big X. When they changed it to that belt, the focus became more on the belt.
Hmm.
Production wise, even like production wise, even the way that I like that way it's sculpted on both plates. Because when it becomes like it changed, like they've had a lot of good plates. Like right now, um, with Roxanne's plates. I like how Roxanne had her plates, and I like how Lyra has her plates on her side of her belt too. It shines so well. For the women, they deserve that type of shine. I understand like gimmicks and stuff. You don't want to put the name on the front of the title, which I like what they don't do now. A lot of people don't have their name on the front, but I like how that looks. Even
And okay, I'm sorry.
I said, even without the name being on the front of the belt, I would take that belt a lot more seriously.
Well, it's crazy that you say this about the belt because that brings us to my favorite part of the show. This is talking about every belt has a story, or in my he voice, every belt has a story. Brought to you by Championship Culture. So this is the time when we talk about the story behind the belt. Now, if you've ever watched Championship Culture, and I like to say everybody has a story, I think you just hit the nail on the head because when I first saw the design of this belt, the men's and the women, I couldn't believe the amount of detail. And I'm gonna try to get close because I want everybody to see. Look at the rivets, the sideline. You see it now in the NXT 2.0 version, the color splatter, because each of these lines have a different um, shade of color in them. I'm trying to see if you can see it on camera. Even up here
You
by
can
what the
see it.
WWE is, the lines in it was just now you will see a reflection of me. The texture or the X, it didn't need any jewels, it didn't need any diamonds,
Right.
no anything.
It
The
didn't need
texture of
any
the
cheeky
X,
rhinestones, none of that.
the reflection, the N and the T are reflective. Some people would say this is when you have gold or silver on plates. Sometimes they consider that dual plating. A dual plating example would be like the AW belt when you have the dual plating and and I'm looking at it in the middle part where it's gold on top of the silver base. But
Right.
this is more of a mirror finish here because
Mhm.
the N, I don't know if you can see it, the N and the T is all me. I've been touching it.
I
It's literally a
never
mirror.
noticed that. Wait, hold on. I have never noticed that until now.
Yeah, let me. I got my fingerprints on it, but when you look at the N and the T, the X is raised. Like when you look at it, the X is actually
Right.
raised, and
Yeah.
it's actually we would consider this a dual plated because it had two plates here, but the X is raised over top of a gold X, which is built into it. It has rivets on the actual belt, and this is one of Triple H designs because we see that in the NXT North American, we see that on the NXT Men's Championship. The women's logo right there doesn't take away from it. The champion is still there, but because of this mirror finish, when the light hits it, and then these rivets or this texture on there, it's kind of like a diamond type of pattern. And even with the simulated
Mm.
bolts, I saw this belt and saw the amount of detail, and I was like, "That's an awesome belt."
Yeah.
And I couldn't decide. I was like, do I get the men's or the women's? The only drawback, and I might have to get the men to show you the true story behind it, it's
Hmm.
smaller. You can see the difference on my
Yeah.
shoulder. It is a smaller belt, but it's for, I'm not trying to say the women are naturally just smaller when it comes to wrestlers. So
Hmm.
you wouldn't want them to have a big bulky belt. This
Right.
belt works perfectly on any woman, whether she has it on her shoulder, around her waist. She's doing the Stephanie Hardy pose where you're holding it. They have it, so it just fits perfectly. So when I had the opportunity to I brought them both at the same time, which is insane. And I will say this: if you have a chance to buy a WWE belt and you see this NXT version, I haven't gotten the 2.0 version for either one. Please don't pass this up. The details in it, even even the basic thing like here, not having color, and I have side plates to replace it. The lines just hit the lights so much, so well. The only drawback to this belt, it has exposed buttons in the back all over it. That's the only drawback.
Oh,
That's most of our belts from WWE that people have. They really have stopped exposing this. It's still there, but there's a lot that's been exposed on this. Now these two right here are for the side plates. This is how you change.
right.
Try to
The
do it.
screw at the
That's how
back.
you
This
change.
is the
Yeah,
screw in the back.
that's how you
Or is
change
it
the
in the
side
front?
plates. You can take them off at the front, but if you wanted to take the whole thing off, I've seen people when you go to re-leather, it's so much easier to do it. But
Right.
I always like to do it from back here and see if I can pop it off before I start because I don't want to mess up this part. But the story behind it, I just liked it. I thought the strap is just amazing. The detail on it is hard to duplicate, even with the X's going across. The clamshell tooling on the side, the diamonds in the middle of the X's, everything about the leatherwork, the cut around. It's not like, oh, it's always sticking out. The cut
Right.
around it is just perfect around the plates. That's what I appreciated, about this belt. And it was like the men's exact same, except for silver and gold inverted. And it doesn't have, of course, it just says women's up here. The WWE symbol is bigger. It goes all the way down on the men's. So where it
Okay.
says women's, on the men's,
Yeah.
it's just the actual W. So
Okay.
that was my breakdown of the belt. I I think WWE was onto something when they were doing this style of belts. And when I say style, it was so good they said, "Oh, put some paint on it to match the logo." What I'm hoping that the logo is now white and gold. I kind of hope we get a revert, but give us something crazy with like gold and white in the background instead of all the different colors splatter.
Yeah,
But
because right now, even as I'm watching NXT, they didn't go back to black and gold. They kind of just made it white and gold,
and
or
that's
yellow,
and
or white and yellow, which is morely white and yellow, which works in my opinion. Um, to kind of give it like its own kind of era. I
Mhm.
I too I'm hoping for that.
And like when you have Smack Raw is usually red, secondary color black.
Right.
SmackDown, the color is blue, and then like a secondary would be like they do some gray, some white. It's really never
Mhm.
had a secondary color. We know we see blue most of the time. White, how they write SmackDown on a blue shirt. When it
Right.
comes to NXT, you see all three of those colors: the gold, black, and white. So that's what I'm
Hmm.
saying. I was so happy. I kind of marked out when they made the women's belt white. I said, yes, they all match now. They all because that was the only belt that was black, and it works. I've seen the first version of the NXT Men's Championship on a white strap, and with that thick leather, it
Yeah.
kind of blew my mind. I was like, and that's a belt, But that was an aftermarket person. I mean, a maker made it aftermarket, so I was like, you know what? That's not bad. But any other thoughts about this belt? Because you see how I started getting excited about this belt. Um, Let me bring it back up. I'm glad you could see some of the details, and I'm glad I should have got the men's belt while we were talking, shouldn't I?
I'm glad you
I don't
brought
know
up
if
the
the
design because um I'm giving her flowers now because I think she's doing great as a champion. But somebody like Lyra Valkyria, if you've ever seen it up close, like production wise, with her, because she comes in on like a blue and white thunderous type hue when she comes in with her entries. But the one thing I noticed with the fog and everything when she comes out with that belt is that it hits different on her, like on her waist.
Mhm.
And it means something when the belt adds to the character. And that's why I say, listen, say what you want about Mandy Rose, but when it debuted and she had that belt, it did something differently to her character. I'm not gonna
when
go
she
into
cut her
more.
promos like this, it was
Yeah,
perfect.
like
It
even
felt like
even
it
with
fit.
even with the other belt, when she would like do her shoots and stuff, it looked different on her. It looked like it wasn't like, oh, I'm a model with this belt. I'm a model, but I'm also a champion. Like I'm also of status. And that's what a belt is supposed to do. It's supposed to elevate status. That's why when um for the women, you're going to either have somebody who's always going to be fashionable with the belt. You know, Roxanne Perez was the same way. She even upped her fashion a little bit when she had the belt. Um, but
Excuse
like
me.
the guys, they tell you, you know, they joke about Roman Reigns wearing tracksuits every day, and he's the undisputed champion. And then you have somebody like Ilya, and you have somebody like Ilya who's always in a suit and tie with the NXT championship. And you got somebody like Seth Rollins who you don't know what he's going to wear. All you know is that he's going to have something to match that gold ass belt, that gold white belt. So the belt makes the character,
And
but
see,
it
and he
has
was right.
personality.
The Chrome does hit a little
It
different.
does
I'm
feel
gonna say
like
that it hits a little different, and I'm gonna tell you, I don't. Thank you, Justin. That's all I'm gonna say about that. I missed that comment, but here's Marcus with another pow right in the kisser. He said the women truly need another belt. There's too much competition. So last week, me and Stephanie Hardy had a kind of like a sidebar about this on the last episode of Championship Culture. And it's crazy because guess what I started seeing popping up? Women's United States, Women's Intercontinental, and Women's Television Championship. Those three things were mentioned in that show. What say you, Seindole? Do we need another women's belt? Or do we go with just the world title for the women's? And when I say world title, NXT World Championship, NXT Championship, World Championship, and WWE Championship. What say you?
I need no,
You
because
need one?
y'all don't appreciate enough. Y'all listen, I'm trying not to bury myself on my own on somebody else's show when I could easily bury this on my own show. Y'all don't appreciate the women enough, and I am saying this because I appreciate them enough. I know who, if they were to put a belt, if they were to give me two more belts, I already know the first two people to give it to. If you were to make the breakout tournament a monthly thing, what's the name would have got her lick back? Kalani Jordan would have had her lick back, and she would be champion by now. If they were to give a tag team championship, I would tell you to put Thea Hale and Brindley Reese in a tag team tournament with Izzy Dane and Kiana James and make them a tag team. If you were to give me an Intercontinental belt, I feel like it should go to Fallon Henley because Fallon Henley been holding down the fort. She has character, she has personality. I feel like, listen, y'all have to appreciate women enough and not just give them belts because you want to see them on TV. Give them the belt because they deserve it. I'm so tired. Like I said, and when you don't appreciate it, what happens is you hot potato. You give it to this team next. This tag team's appealing, so you gave it to them. This tag team looks strong, so you give it to them. You don't have enough tag teams on the roster trips. So you put two random wrestlers who don't have a WWE championship place and you give them the tag team champion. When you start giving belts, and that's why the 24/7 championship belt did not live as long as you want to. R-Truth didn't need to be the champion 374 times. He did not. He did not. It did what it's supposed to do. It was comedic. It was fun. But when you have too many belts, you have what ends up happening. Because look at a promotion that has enough belts and they just added another one, but you don't see anything going on with the other one. To the point where you forgot
You
the
can say
person
the
behind
promotion.
it is, huh?
You can say the promotion. Go ahead and say it.
Okay.
Speak on it.
I don't want to dogpile on AEW because I get it. There's so many wrestlers they can only feature in a week and their format is different, which is fine. It works for some people. What I don't get is how are you going to treat the champion? Because I think Julia Hart, for how much she's learned and how long she's come, she should be defending that title every week, whether it be on a collision, whether it be on actual TBS, whether it be on TNT by accident. She should be defending that title every week, and she's not. And it bothers me. It bothers the piss out of me because she's somebody that came a long way who learned how to wrestle. She was labeled as like the stable girl. That she was when she was doing that Varsity Blonde stuff. She came a long way by learning from, Aleister Black and Buddy and Brody King when she's in House Black. Her and Sky Blue are doing a phenomenal job working together. She's somebody that should be defending that title every single week. Because for her to take it off of somebody like Chris Statlander, she should be in my face, and she's not. And that's my worry when you start giving, you don't put them, and let's be real, it's an industry thing. It's not a WWE fault or AEW fault or even any other promotion's fault. If you're gonna give me a champion, put them in my face every week. The only brand that does that week in and week out, WWE's still doing it, AEW's doing it, but only doing it with Tony Storm, because Tony Storm thing is a continuous thing. Ring of Honor is doing a phenomenal job. They turned that whole minions thing with Athena and her having minions. They put her in my face every week. That's the type of energy I need to have. If you're gonna give me a belt, put the person in my face every week. Don't just give me a belt to say the belt's there. At least when they had, for example, when Chelsea Green and Piper Niven were champions, even though it was a transitional thing because Sonya Deville was out, you had Chelsea Green in my face every single week. Do the same thing. My hope with the Kabuki Warriors not their back, you put the Kabuki Warriors in my face every single week. I'm going to be invested in the tag team championships, and you did that by putting them on NXT too. If you're going to create a belt, I need to see the champion holding the belt. I don't need them just being there just to be there. So without going any further, if you're going to give NXT women another championship belt, I want to see that champ. I want to see it defended every week. I want to see it get the same energy that the North American Championship has. I need to be like, who the hell is this girl that you put on my screen and she has the belt? If you're going to create another tournament, they got to be in my face. That's just all I have for that. But the women do a great job, belt or no belt, being in my face. So they get their flowers on that. And with that being said, I've ranted long enough on your show. My bad. But
No,
just
you're
this is how
perfectly
I
fine.
feel.
And I'm gonna throw a monkey wrench in there for you, and I'm gonna ask you this question: if WWE as a whole introduced a secondary title for the women, this is my running theory. Should that woman be able to float between all three shows?
Yeah. I feel like Lyra, the best thing that happened for Lyra was for her to be able to go on, but she was on the main roster. She went on the main roster for a little bit. She's been featured. She should be able to, I like that everybody now, instead of her having to be like, oh, let me clear the whole NXT locker room. The fact that Shotzi was like, I want a shot. Even when Tiffany, even though the way it happened was interesting, when Tiffany was NXT champion, for her to be like, you know what? No, I'm gonna go up against Becky. And you want smoke too? Anybody can get it.
And see, and I think that if I am, let's just say, it's the WWE National Championship, right? And the reason I'm saying that because the MLW National Championship is looking at me, right? So I have wrestler A is on Monday Night Raw, wrestles against Natalia, wins, right? Because we know Natalia's an established star. On SmackDown, she go wrestle, let's say, Mia Yim. But
Right.
then on Tuesday, she turned around and she loses to, let's say, Valiant, right? No, let's say Thea Hale. Thea Hale wins, so now she can go between all three shows. But guess
Right.
what? That wrestler stays on NXT because she lost the belt there. So now you have Thea Hale going to all three shows. Let's say she loses to Mia Yim. Now, guess what? Mia Yim can float between all three shows, and we got now the hell on SmackDown. I think it's
Right.
a way to transition some women, get us to see. I think because let's be honest, you got a Tegan Knox there, you got all these women sprinkled that can do so much. Like, what if Dakota Kai winds up with it? The other member of Damage Control that doesn't have anything right now besides being a mouthpiece. What if she wins the belt? So now not only do you have the tag team champions floating between all three shows, but you got her as well. I think that it's storyline that can be added that way because do I think each show needs a secondary belt? No, no, Tony
Right.
Khan, stop it. We don't need a
Yeah.
secondary belt for Ring
And
of
not to
Honor.
dogpile on the brand, but it's like you had a tournament to have a TV women's belt, and I'm like, I don't understand why, because you
Right.
don't, like, you need to work on featuring the amazing talent you have already. But if you think giving them a belt is going to do it, which I don't know.
Hey,
Again,
hey, I got a suggestion for you. Take your tag team champions off of your main roster from ROH and put them back on ROH Because I see them more on. Let me. Okay. Um.
Yeah. Again, we trying. I try so hard not to talk pop, but it's just like, yo,
Yeah.
she literally should be in my face. Like I should be like, okay, Julia, like it's 9:30. Julia Hart should be coming on. Like I should. I'm not getting it. And
Everybody
it's
says that about
frustrating.
the. But see, now I'm gonna just say this about the belt. I honestly think the easiest way for it to fix that, if the show that's on TNT only sees the TNT champion when the world champion isn't there, whether it be man or woman world champion, right? But then for the TBS show, only the I will see that champion when the male or female world champion is not there too. They need to be the staples of that show that I know that's where I see them. And a special attraction like Battle of the Belts, if it's going to be a special thing where that's when they're going to cross promote them. But don't get me wrong, Christian Cage kind of simmered off a little bit. He's not as menacing as he was a few months ago. But
Yeah.
the whole family thing, I
Still
get
holding
it.
it down though.
Yeah, and I'm a Christian. Look, you see what belt is in the forefront. I'm a Christian fanatic. I love Christian, and I love the way that Julia Hart has transitioned. But to your point, I think WWE Machine could take a secondary title and allow the women to be able to have something viable to fight for outside of just the world champion, or just get rid of the tag team belts because this makeshift tag team, like, oh, I'm gonna be a tag team with you, even though last year we were fighting against each other on our opposing team, or
Hey,
a
hey,
few months
hey,
ago.
listen. It works for the Wolf Dogs. Okay, it got Braun his second NXT champion. It's worked for the Wolf Dogs. So let's not. I be
But you
thinking
know
the
what? It
same way
didn't
you're
work.
thinking, but I get it.
How
I get
Shayna
it.
Baszler and Natalya gonna be a tag team, and they were just okay. Yep.
I'm
Didn't
saying it worked. It worked for the Wolf Dogs because Braun Breaker and freaking Baron Corbin broke a hole into Shawn Michaels' office, and now they the Wolf Dogs coming out and matching motorcycles and face masks. So you never know. Listen,
walking
it's
their motorcycles to the ring? But on that, I think that this has been an interesting volume 6 to NXT. I think that we have hit some great points. Anybody in the comments, if you got anything you want to add about this version of the title, this NXT Women's Championship version 2, the silver version,
that's
during the black and gold era, this beautiful championship, which I think we talked about um, some good things. But before I let you go, I got to ask you this because he was going to kill me if I don't ask this. But wait, let's say we'd really like to discuss the more in depth sometimes in the future. Thank you for answering. Interesting. I'll tell you what, Marcus. When you want to discuss a belt, you hit us up and we'll talk about this belt. If you want all three of us, if Hugh's in the background, probably laughing like, "Ooh, which show we gonna book for this?" Um, we can always do it every Tuesday, 8 p.m. We're ready. I'm always ready to talk about some belts. But let me ask you this, Seindole, and I want you to give me. I'm gonna ask you for two top fives. This is why Hugh's gonna hate me. Who are your top 5 NXT wrestlers right now? Of course, the women. Top 5 NXT women's wrestlers. And now let me clarify this. They could have came through NXT. They could be NXT right now. Give me your top 5 NXT women's wrestlers.
uh, does it have to be in order?
Nope, no particular order.
Okay,
Because I
so
know putting them
Kalani
in order is a
Jordan,
little pressure. Kalani
Kalani
Jordan.
Jordan, um, Thea Hale, Lyra Valkyria, Fallon Henley, and then I give my last spot to Kiana James because I just feel like Kiana James deserves more than what she's well. She's putting her back, who put herself back in the stable, so I definitely think she deserves more than what she's given. But she's always involved in some way or somehow. But definitely Kiana James.
Boom. So my next top 5 for you, and I don't think I've asked you this. Give me your top 5 titles. It can be any brand, any version. Top 5 titles in no particular order.
That I pay attention to, or that are my favorite.
Your favorite. If I say it right now, I'm gonna ship you 5 of your favorite belts. What are they?
One of them would actually be the belt that we talked about tonight. I do my goal is to get the NXT Women's Championship belt for myself. Um, the Rhea Ripley's version of the belt. I actually like Rhea Ripley's belt better than the one that Io Sky is holding. I like it's the shape, the color. I feel like it's like you say it's a light. That's a lighter version of the men's. I look at it and I'm like, that side by side with the men's is like a perfect combination. It's giving power couple, to be quite honest.
The white strap makes it look so much better.
Does it have to be any promotion?
Yeah, any promotion.
I've always been a fan of how the Knockouts Championship looks. That's
The current
also
one or
no,
the older ones?
the old ones. Like we're talking, well, I don't want the one that the beautiful people had because I felt like that was just like, okay, here you go. Like I felt like it was that bad. I'm talking about the one they did before they changed it to this current one.
Like these?
Yes.
Okay.
So it would be actually the one right next to your head. Yes. It would be
The
that
real.
one.
Okay.
Yes. I've always wanted the original WWE Women's Championship belt because of course it holds so much memory for me as far as me being able to see women hold it when Stephanie held it, when Lita held it, when Trish, held it, even going up to when Mickey James and held on to it and Michelle McCool and all of them like fought to have that belt before. It holds so much memory to me to just see all the women who literally held on to it and just showed so much fight for it because they weren't taken seriously. They were just like the attraction, the bathroom break. And women like Lita and Trish and Jazz and Ivory and all the people that held on to those belts for me always piqued my interest. So I love that belt. And again, the TBS championship was such a beautiful championship, even with Jade holding it, Chris Statlander, and with Julia Hart holding it right now. It's something that I would hold cherish to, and I just wish it was something that was featured more because it's a beautiful belt. It's a blue. I believe the writing is blue on the belt. It's also a silver plated belt.
Mm-hmm.
And it just looks good on a female. When Jade had it for that year, even though she wasn't featured, I mean, she was featured every week, but she was winning every week. They weren't taking the reign seriously, but Jade just held it so well as a champion and looked so good doing it that it was just like, all right, forget that it's not on TV. Like Jade has it. It looked good on her. And she made it look
That's
good
the
as
belt at
she
the top. That's the belt at the very top of this
of the
list of
TNT. Yeah.
It's at the very top of it.
It almost looks like what's my brother said it looks like a football ring, but I'm like, no, it doesn't. It's like they thinking like an NFL championship ring, kind of.
Oh, probably because of the texture on it.
Right.
I can see that because of the texture. Yeah. Or because of the TBS logo being so huge on it.
Right.
So, interesting top five. So we said the NXT, this version, NXT version 2,
Mm-hmm.
WWE Women's Championship, TBS, the Knockout Rare version, and I missed one. The what was the other one?
I said the
Oh, Rhea Ripley's world title.
Rhea
The
Ripley's
world title.
WWE Women's Championship belt currently.
That's a that's a that's really a good mix
Mm-hmm.
because you got some from the past and you got some that is making history right now, and it's crazy because we're in
Yeah.
Women's History Month, so it was all by design that we did this because we wanted to make sure that one, people know. I don't want to necessarily say her story because it's still history being made, but we want to make sure that people understand with this history that's being made because we can call it her story. I feel like that's debunking it because separate but equal is always an oxymoron to me. So I want to be as inclusive as possible. So with that being
And I
said,
appreciate you for doing that because not a lot of people are trying to talk about women's belts. Like we always fantasize about the men's belt, but women want belts too. Like you saw the reaction from Queen PR and from Krista. That look at how they have their belts. Like us girls want belts too. I have friends that have WWE belts that have the SmackDown, Raw, like that. Come on, we want belts too. It's not just a male's game out here.
and I thought you would have definitely. I thought you was going to list this one as one of your favorite belts. But
Oh my
we,
God, how can I forget? No, it can't. It's my only favorite non-women's belt. How can I? The belt that was literally I prepared myself for that belt. I wish you had a picture of me putting it on. Like I prepared because I remember. So you say every belt has a story, right?
Yes.
So when I first got in tune with that belt was when actually BlurCon happened because
Uh-huh.
Brian brought it to BlurCon and it was really heavy, but it was on my lap, and I was like, this just looks really good, like with the Maryland crest on it, because shout out to Maryland, because I have family in that live near Belt Parkway. I have a family live in Hyattsville. I have a family that lives in DC. So Maryland's very close to my heart. There's a Maryland County in Liberia. So Maryland's very close to my heart. Love Maryland. So when I saw that belt, I was like, oh my God, it's just so beautiful. And Brian tried to take it away from me, and I was kind of like, give it back. Like it was mine.
You know, the only reason this made it to New York was because of you. I made a promise. I remember I said on the show, I said, all right, if I come to New York, it's just going to be with me. And that day when I saw you, I said, oh, look, and she matched the belt too. And I ain't want to say it. I'm going to just put it on the screen because somebody said what you did to it. But I'm going to tell you this, ladies and gentlemen, if you ever want to know a story behind a belt, Seindole goes into an in-depth discussion about why this belt was so um, close to her heart. It has some origins and some things that really touched. And it was from that story I said, you know what, I'm going to make sure that every time I went to New York until she was able to hold it. And it was crazy because remember when I came, I was like, here. I was like, here you go.
You did as soon as I walked in, and I was just like, I came in, everybody was just like, Seattle's here, blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, hi, 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 hi. And then I finally meet you for the first time. And the first thing you're like, hi, I'm Brandon, and you're sticking out the belt. And I was like, oh my God. And everybody was like, did you really wear red leather? I was like, yes. First of all,
he was prepared for it.
I searched high and low for that dress just so I can wear the belt, and I wore it. And I was like, listen, I'm going to look like the female valet for the wrestling realm. I might as well look the part. So that's what that came from. And that's how I felt. It was a great moment. And everybody was like, it looks really good on you. And I'm like, please don't, because they have to take it back. And I might like leave HQ with it. And I don't want to get killed. So please don't put that in my head. But oh no, yes. I
think that's the only time a belt has not been in my sight and I wasn't worried about it. I was like, it's in good hands. And it's
yeah, I was like, I can't go far with this thing. It's heavy. Like people were like, yo, this looks cool. Like I think even, and shout out to my younger brother, because my brother was like, yo, I'm not gonna lie, that shit looks dope. And he held it, and then he was like, yo, this shit looks fly. And he had it out when Brian was like, yo, brother looks fly. I was like, yeah, you know.
Because remember, Nesto had Brian's belt.
Yes.
He had the version that's on the original version. And I didn't even know that you love red as much. I had all of their belts made on red leather because I was like, I'm gonna do something different. And it was like, I remember you was like, oh my God, it's on red. And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna make sure. If we would have been in New York 27 times and didn't see you any of them times, this belt was going on the road trip with me. So that's because I wanted to make sure that you got to hold this belt. Now I can tell you what, it might make it to Mania too, because I don't know. Are you gonna make it to Mania? Because that might be your belt to carry around. So we shall see.
Sir, if you tell me you're bringing that belt to Mania, now you're gonna have me go shopping one more time, because I already have all my drip for Mania, and now I'm gonna need drip for that drip. So okay.
Because when we get together, we take belt pictures. I want to make sure that you have a belt in the picture with you.
I ain't got to know those wrestling girls' belts, so I might just have to take that specific belt. But now you telling me I have to change outfits to change that belt. So now we don't have to talk off camera, because now you talking about something that's like listen, me and Nicki Minaj gonna be outside. So yeah, I'm not playing games. I will literally. Okay.
So we shall see.
We shall see.
Yep, this will be interesting. So let's do this, because I think we hit enough of it, and I think that we were able to answer some questions for some people, give them a little insight, have a little fun with it. We definitely did a good thing tonight. I definitely appreciate the fact that you took time out from what happens next to talk about Every Belt Has a Story. Because if you don't know, please check out. Well, let me just show you better. I can tell you. Please check out what happened. I'm sorry. Watch What Happens Next every Tuesday at what time?
At 6 p.m.
Eastern Standard Time with the one and only Seindole. Tell the people where they can find you at.
You can catch me on X at Reload via Film, where I do stream Watch What Happens NXT Live from there. You can also catch me on reload.relive on Instagram. You can also catch any updates on Watch What Happens NXT over on its own Instagram channel, which is at Watch What Happens NXT. You can also from time to time catch me on, if I'm not doing Watch What Happens NXT, over here on YouTube via Those Wrestling Girls, X, Twitch. We're on every platform there. You can also catch me on TWG Fan Club every Wednesday with Queen PR, Mr. Brian H. Water, who's of course a part of the wrestling realm, and is Justin Rich. And you can also too, from time to time, I do appear on schooling sessions with Pablo, Chris Contradas, and of course Miss Krista B. But other than that, you can catch me out trying to find outfits that match with belts. Among other things, I'm also on YouTube myself, so I do post YouTube videos every now and again. So that's just me in a nutshell, y'all.
So they got a couple options to watch it, but most importantly, the lead in the championship culture seems to be watch what happens next. So if
Yes.
you want to see all things NXT, hear from the expert herself. If you want to know anything about the world of professional wrestling, with a subject matter expert or laser focus on women's wrestling, who do you go to? That's Seindole. That's what I'm gonna say about that. I want to thank everybody again for joining us tonight. If you get a chance, don't forget to go over to youtube.com/the wrestling realm, where you can watch all of season one and catch up on the flagship show of the wrestling realm by going to youtube.com/the wrestling realm. Follow us on X at wrestling realm, and don't forget to follow us on Instagram at championship culture underscore. There you will see posts from, we usually post clips from our show on Tuesday night. Sometimes it's some nice graphics, sometimes some conversation. All I'm gonna say is engage with us. As you can see tonight, we very much engage and we welcome the comments. Sometimes we might even go on a tangent with you in these comments. So please post your comments, make your comments, and wait for our reply for the comments. I think I said enough there. Anything before we sign off to for the people?
No, just thank you for taking me down memory lane. It was fun to research this episode. It was fun to, I was like, dang, I forgot this person. I forgot Io almost had it for a full year. I forgot that she's one of the only two to not have a combined championship reign that was long, just a straight reign. It made me realize that like a lot of women, like a lot of girls, like even recently now what's going on, I always brag about the new generation, like with Lyra, and I give Tiffany her flowers because Tiffany was someone who wasn't expected. It just put me down, like even like it just put me down a great memory lane, and I appreciate you for that. Just keep up the great work with belts, because I feel like belts were something that like my dad generation was obsessed with, and it made the person. And I'm glad that someone's bringing up the point that it does have a story, because these belts really do make the person and they do tell a story. So I appreciate you for having me on here and for recognizing the NXT Women's Championship belt, because it's got a lot. If you look at the people that had it, the Baileys, the EOs, the Charlotte Flair going back together, even it making Rhea who she is, making Becky go back for it, Roxanne Perez having the reign, Mandy Rose, all the women that held it before, just giving them their flowers, something I've always wanted to do.
And I think that does it for us. Thank you again, Ciendor. We appreciate you, one, taking the time out. Two, thank you for your insight. You know we appreciate it. And always, don't forget, every belt has a story, and I can't wait to hear yours.